Today we are talking middle schoolers, woohoo! 12 to 14. I like to break up the teen years between middle school and high school because they are very, 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 very different animals, and there are different ways of managing these age groups. So I will let you know how this works. The way that this works is that while everybody starts coming in, I spent the first part of our little free webinar talking about what I imagine are your current pain points for children 12 to 14. And why I do that is because of three things. One, because a lot of your pain points currently are just based on normative development. And unfortunately, the pediatrician, your parents, the books out in the world haven't told you that there are things that 12, 13, and 14-year-olds do that are perfectly normal that we see as a problem or challenging behavior. So I love starting out with talking to you guys about pain points because you think I'm a witch and I can, I'm in your house and I see what's happening, but actually it's just me proving to you that development is happening and a lot of the things that you are currently managing is development. Two, I like to do the pain points because currently in a global way, we are all living through this massive stressor that's behind us. That is this quarantine, pandemic, call it whatever you want to call it, that we're all living. So I want everybody to kind of see the universality of the pain points so that you don't feel so alone, and hence Stop Parenting Alone, the name of the business, right? Because I want, there's something magical when I can look at you and I say, yeah, I feel that way too. There's power in those words. And by the way, amongst your friends and amongst the others adults in your lives, make sure that you're doing that and you're saying that. And finally, I like to do it in the beginning because sometimes you guys are shy. And if I just open it up for questions, it becomes very quiet. And that's normal, right? Because here's the stranger that some of you don't know. Some of you do know me. I see some names that I recognize in the attendees, but some of you don't know me. So because of that, after I share the pain points and while you're listening, there are three ways to ask me a question that I want to make it as comfortable as possible for everybody that's joining us. So one, put your question, hit the Q&A tab. If you're on a phone, kind of hit the bottom of your screen and you'll see all the tabs kind of come up. If you don't see it, press the more button and you'll get the Q&A tab. If you ask your question in there, you could choose to ask an anonymous question and I won't know who's asking it. I'll just be able to read the question. You could put it in the chat. I can see who it is that's asking me the question, and so can the other members, unless you put it in privately. If you put it in privately, I will know that you're just asking me the question for me. And the last way is when I finish presenting my little slideshow that I made for you. It's not a slideshow, it's just a slide of the pain points. You can raise your hand and I will unmute you, and there is no video because it's a webinar, so I don't see you, so you don't have to worry. If you're in pajamas, it's fine. And you can ask me your question verbally. Okay, so that's the rules of the game, and let's start right away. So let me share my slide because it's not a slideshow. And here are the pain points that I imagine that you guys are dealing with. So couple of things that I want to say about school, about virtual versus in-person, and what to expect. So first and foremost, this age group in a really short amount of time has two big transitional markers as it pertains, actually it has three, has transitional markers as it pertains to school. The sixth grader, right, that's going from fifth grade to sixth grade, where more of them is expected, even if you are in a K through 8, even if you are at a school like Gulliver, where their middle school starts in 5th grade, 6th grade is a time when the teachers start treating them more like teens and less like children. And actually, if you are currently in a charter school where they're still treating them like an elementary school child, kind of like spoon feeding information to them, that's not developmentally appropriate. We want a 6th grader to kind of begin to get a taste of independence, and most definitely as it pertains to school, right? This is the time when you stop writing emails to the teacher. This is the time when you ask them, hey, what is expected of you from the teacher? This is the time when you sit with them and the syllabus that the teacher gives to them, whether, in the Google Classroom or however the teacher is getting their information, and you let them explain to you what they understand is expected of them. A lot of the time, our children hand us the syllabus or hand us the rules of the classroom and say, sign here, and we don't have conversations with them, right? So 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade is the constant practicing, right? And the constant messing up time of your child being able to be independent in their communication with the adult that is teaching them, which is that teacher. So if your child comes to you and says, Mom, I'm in 7th grade and I'm in Algebra 1 and I don't understand anything that's happening, do not open your computer and type away at the teacher. I'll say that again. I'll say that really loud through my microphone. Do not email the teacher. Rather, sit with your child and teach them how to attain help, right? So first, we help them very politely write to the teacher and CC us, right? They can put us in the email, but the email should and needs to come from your child. Why? This age group is where they are finally practicing independence. So whether they're in virtual school, whether they're in person school, the number one thing that I want you guys to really wrap your head around is let go of the reins. I want them to fail their school and their grades miserably. I actually wanted them to fail since 3rd grade, but I know that I'm getting to some of you late. In 3rd grade is the first time when we just set the timer, tell them, hey, this is your time for homework, and whatever they get done, they get done. And if they don't get it done, you put it in the backpack and then you send them to school without homework. But if you hadn't started that in 3rd grade, this is the time to start it. So school-wise, whether it's virtual or in person, this is the time to get more hands off with your child, and not hands off in the deal with it by themselves on their own without you micromanaging them. High school, deal with it with your assistance and with your how. Middle school. So again, check in. Hey, I saw that you have a quiz on Friday. When is your plan to study? Okay, well, when I was at school, I used to study right? So it's about continuing to help hand over the reins of the responsibility of school to your child, and please allow them to fail. Now, this school year has been very unusual for all of our students. Those that are in public school, have had to deal with the first week of chaos. Now they're, dealing with the new platforms. Those that are in private school, you as parents have had to decide whether or not to keep them virtual, to send them back to school. And, I'm only talking about them. I'm talking to the 12, the 14, the 15-year-old. And, in this time, it is important to have open communication with your middle schooler, right? Let them tell you what are their thoughts about it, right? And then, but let them know, and this is true of the high schooler as well, that you will make the final decision. But as it pertains to school, there are 2 really important pieces that that they're missing out on if they're not on campus. One, continuing to build that relationship with the adults around them that help them understand responsibility and help them speak to authority in a respectful way. And two, the social piece, right? So in virtual learning, it's a little bit more difficult to do what they sneak in between classes, what they do in the lunch break. For some schools, they actually get a middle of the day break, like a snack break, not public school, but for some other schools. So it is important that you're finding time for your child to have those moments with their peers. And, we are all thinking about the medical help. And this goes back to this pain point of like, Lina, what about the social interaction, right? Don't get caught up in that they have to see the person live. For those of you that are being a little more careful because you have particulars about the disease, this is the age group where they are meeting in the Animal Crossing app, they are meeting in the Roblox app, they are meeting, some of them are still meeting in the Minecraft app, and that has become the new playground. They are doing FaceTime. They are, finding apps like WhatsApp. And there's another one that I just heard about that I have to read more about. I think it's called Distortion or Disruption or something. I already forgot the name, where they're meeting, right? So a tip for all of you is to get to know the parents of the kids that your child wants to hang out in the Animal Crossing game or the Roblox game or the Minecraft game, and help one another, right? Call that other parent and say, hey, I know that our kids have been meeting up in these video games. I'm going to let my kid do that from 3:30 to 5. Can you do the same for yours so that we can both keep the limit? So I just, so that entails the social for school, the social interaction that they are missing out on in a creative way, and one tactic of the screens, right? Because the screens have become very social for your kids. So again, as it pertains to school, the other piece that I know it's a great big pain point to a lot of you is making the actual decision of whether or not to stay virtual or go back to school, right? So the way to make that decision, and it is a very difficult decision, and primarily why it's so difficult, it's because we don't have facts. Unfortunately, this situation that we're in, there isn't like a concrete, yes, 5% positivity rate of the city, there aren't concrete numbers, and there are a lot of different opinions, right? So one, talk to your child, wonder with them. For example, the school where my kids are at, they're every 3 weeks, we get to choose whether we stay at home or we go on campus, right? So I'm coming up on the 3 weeks, and I'm going to have to let the school know whether my child is going back to school. And I have a 12-year-old, and in our little lunchtime, that because he's in virtual school, I get to have together with him, which is really nice. There's like the benefits of this, right? I spoke to him and I said, hey, which ones of your close friends are on campus? Which ones are not? Which ones do you know are gonna? So it's kind of like wondering with the child and letting them know, well, what would it be like to be on campus? What would it be like to be off campus? If you were on campus, what do you imagine is going to be easy, and what do you imagine is going to be hard? And if you stay home, what do you imagine is going to be easy and what's going to be hard? So now you have your child's information. The next thing you need to get is your own information, your own sources about the medical piece. The medical piece is real. It's not made up. It's not a hoax. We do know that this is real. And, so find the sources that you feel comfortable with. The CDC actually has a great school decision PDF. So you put CDC school decision PDF, and it doesn't tell you yay or nay, but it asks you the questions, and it kind of helps you think, right? About, how do you feel about it, right? And then get the information from your school. What is the school doing? How are they going to keep them healthy? What are they doing with the kids? How are the kids being social? How different is it? And then you take all this information and make a decision. Now, here's the key. Because our anxious brain does not like that, our choices are not good. Our choices are not concrete. So that by definition, that causes our brain to second guess ourselves, right? Because we don't have facts, right? That's why some people are creating their own facts, right? Because it makes them feel safer, right? Some people think it's the end of the world. Some people think it's all fake. But we all know that with this uncertainty, the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? And we don't like that uncertainty. So once you make your decision, give yourself a due date and say, I am not going to look at this decision again until this particular date. This is why I kind of really like that my school's doing that, because, every 3 weeks I get to reimagine and rethink this decision of mine, right? And that's really healthy, because when your brain starts telling you, but you made the wrong choice and all of his friends are at school and you could remind yourself, no, I said I was going to keep to this decision until October 13th. On October 13th, I will revisit the decision. And then you're going to keep doing that, repeat and remind, repeat and remind, repeat and remind, because an anxious brain is a second guessing brain. A brain in fear is always questioning safety. Right? So that's why I want you to do the big work in the beginning. And in this age group, please, you let them know that the decision is yours, but get information from them. Because a lot of you are calling me and doing parenting consultations with me, worried about this decision, worried about the social piece, worried about your child. And a lot of you have not asked your child. Some kids don't even want to go back to school. So get some information from them. But again, let them know you are making the final decision. They can't make this decision. They're too young. And neither can the high schoolers, by the way. Okay, so rules and restrictions. This is the first time in the trajectory of development where there is more wiggle room to rules and restrictions than ever before. So when your child was born, between 0 to 5, you told them how to eat, how to walk, how to sleep, how to dress, how to be a friend, how to manage their emotions, right? Then between 5 and 12, we tell them how and why, right? How to go to school and why we go to school, how to make a best friend and why we make a best friend, how to choose an after school activity and or hobby and or sport and why, so how and why. Now in this age group, all the way until they leave your house, right? We tell them how, why, and what do you think? Again, just like the decision of school, this is an important time, when recently I had a parenting consult with a family, and the child was pushing back and pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. And there was one thing that the child was pushing back on, and it rules and restrictions at this time is mixed with independence. Right? So there are rules that a lot of you are still keeping that are not age appropriate. And for this particular family, this child who was 12, wanted to cook the lunch for themselves. And the parent just didn't have a why. Why not? It's not safe. He's a mess. Da 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 da. And it was about independence, right? So in this age group, we have to tell them how to make the ramen noodles or the macaroni and cheese or the grilled cheese or the eggs that they want to make themselves for breakfast or lunch, right? How? They know the why, hopefully, because they've been eating all this time, right? And we tell them why, and then we ask them, what do you think? Why do you want to cook for yourself? And the more you do that with the rules, right? If you have a rule that your 12 or 13 or 14-year-old keeps pushing back on with you, you have to wonder, what do you think, right? So maybe there's a particular TV show, or there's a particular a video game that you don't want them to play, that and it's, again, you tell them, I'm going to make the final decision, but I want to hear you out. What do you think? Why do you think that it's time for you to watch this anime show that is so violent? True story. So, and listen to your child. 12, 13, 14-year-olds will surprise you when you ask them why, and you stop seeing them as little, as 10 or 9 or incapable or too messy or too irresponsible, and you start respecting their thoughts and what they are, how they're thinking about the world. First of all, they take on more responsibility and independence. Second, you teach them how to present to an authority figure their case, right? Like, which is something that they're going to need when they're 26, 32, 45, especially if they work for someone, talking to you about their need and what they want and what they aspire to do in a polite and kind way, which, by the way, they're not going to do. They're going to be really rude. Right? And in the moment when you're like, no, I don't think that you should be able to play Minecraft. You should be able to play Roblox for 8 hours. No, it is not healthy. But why do you think you have to play Roblox? And they're going to tell you, because that's where I hang out with Tom, and Tom is on, and he wants to be on with all of his friends. Most of them will tell you the truth, but they're not going to be like, well, mother, I was thinking. That's where they're going to be when they're 14, 15. But at 12, they're going to be like, oh, but you're so annoying. And then that's your opportunity to tell them how and why. Okay, we're disagreeing. Calm down. And let's not fight, and let's talk to one another about why this is so important to you. So again, with rules and restrictions, some of their pushback is because they already can do a lot of these things independently. And the rule in childhood development is, if they can do it on their own, we let them. And this is as early as the little tiny one that could put on their shoes and with the Velcro, even though they put their left foot on their right foot, we leave them alone. And this is true of the 12 or 13-year-old that just wants to make their own lunch. And, the first time they make their own lunch, we know our kitchen is going to be gross and disgusting and a mess. However, we allow them to do it. And then we walk when they're done. And after school, we can go and be like, okay, come here, buddy. Look, I love that you made your own lunch, but the second half of making a meal is to clean it. And then you teach them how, and then you repeat and remind. And another piece, when they tell you their why, if you still disagree, yes, maintain your boundary, and back to you, right? So in making the decisions about school, it's a little bit about you and like handling your anxiety. When we set rules and restrictions, they don't have to agree with you and or like it. They just have to follow it. So if a 12-year-old is like, oh, and they're eating angry at the table, but they're still there eating, leave them alone. If they go like that, but they're still following the rule, we leave them alone. In the moment, when you set the boundary, that's their immature emotional response to decreasing their pleasure that you, the parent, as you should, is canceling. So a lot of the time you get into it with and this starts as early as 8 years old, with your 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old child, because you want them to be respectful and happy with your rule rather than human and irritable in the midst of a pandemic. So many of us took out the garbage this morning that our partners didn't take to the garbage can because they were whatever they were doing, true story. And we were talking smack about them in our head all the way from the kitchen to the outside garbage. That's human nature. The difference between us, the adults, and them, the middle schoolers, or them, the school-age kids, is that it spills over. I do not, I never think that there's an issue with a child if they are, like going, oh, while they're going to their bedroom, or when they're like, fine, I'll go to sleep, God, we're done. So that we leave them alone. That is you setting the boundary, and they don't have to like your rule, but do have communication with them, because sometimes, they give you a good reason to watch the anime. Okay, now screens. How to think about them, how to keep them safe. I want you to think about screens at this time, especially now in global pandemic times. Those that were on this call, this whole time since March, since I've been doing them, as a plate of food, right? There must be variety, okay? And so that's how I want you to think about them, right? When are they using it for social means? When are they using it for entertainment, right? So social is super important. Social, I want you to protect. Social, I want you to allow as often as possible. No, not 5 hours a day, but yes, definitely an hour and a half if they're using it socially. I think, especially if you know the kids that they're using it socially with, that's great. Two, are they using it for entertainment? Is that where they're watching their anime show? Is that where they're watching, the latest episodes from Netflix, right? Television and TV shows and movies, it's very passive, right? It's all visual input, is all auditory input. A lot of kids that live with ADHD or a learning difference, watching a TV show is like us, unhooking our jeans and drinking tea or wine if you're a wine drinker. I'm not. I'm a tea drinker. That is really calming, right? That's why a lot of us, even the adults during the pandemic time, have chosen to binge Netflix rather than read a book, because watching television is passive. And there's not a lot of research out there that says whether it's good or bad for cognition or anything like that. It doesn't decrease anything the way that video games does. But with television and entertainment, it's about what are they watching, right? So as it pertains to when they're using it socially, make sure that the kids that they're using the screen socially. As it pertains to entertainment, make sure that what they are watching and why they are watching it, and use the reason that they're watching the 100, which is actually for like 14-year-olds, not 12-year-olds. Wonder with them why they're attracted to it. And then that's always use popular culture with this age group to talk to them about your rules, your world, your thoughts, right? And the last thing that children use screens is with video games. Now, we do have tons of research around video games. And no, video games does not kill them. No, video games is not the devil incarnate. No, video games, everybody talks about video games like we talk about Elvis Presley, right? Remember back in the day? Well, we don't remember because some of us are young, but when Elvis Presley first came out, they never shot him from the waist down because he would move his hips. And everybody thought that was the end of the world. Everybody thinks that video games is the end of the world. Everybody thinks that screens and video games are not the end of the world. There is zero correlation, meaning that this, because this happens then this happens, or causation, because this happens and this happens, between the use of social media or TV or video games to cause a child to do anything. You don't believe me, but it's true. I recently wrote a response to Common Sense Media around this. What we do know is that if a child is anxious, if a child is depressed, if a child is already feeling less than, they will be attracted to those things in the social media world, in the TV world, and in the video game world. So that's the other way that I want you to look at the screen and how to think about them. If you're thinking that the screen is influencing your child, then you solve the screen. But it's the other way around. Your child already has the plug to plug into what the social media, the video game, and the TV show is offering them. Right? So if you only concentrate on the bad of the screen, then you're not looking at the real problem, which is your child. So allow the screen and what they're doing on the screen to be information for you, and how are they doing internally. So if they're watching a TV show about kids that hate life and want to commit suicide, don't think that your child wants to commit suicide, because that's not necessarily so, like 13 Reasons Why, but wonder with them, hey, what attracted you to the show? And maybe they're attracted to the hero, right? So that's one way that screen can be very, very helpful. Lina, how much time is the right time? Prior to pandemic times, we always said 2 hours a day, approximately, especially for video games. No more than 3 hours for video games. Somewhere around that, between 3 and 2. That's almost impossible in global pandemic times. And again, school does not count. Social time with friends, you shouldn't count. Social time with friends, I would keep it to an hour and a half. But do count video games alone and TV alone, and keep that to 2 hours. So with that math, we're looking to about 4 hours a day. A lot of these kids are doing, but just be awake and aware about what's on and how to keep them safe. Check their history. Statistically, boys in the United States will find porn by the age of 10. So some of your 12, 13, or 14-year-olds have probably already discovered porn. It's way easier to Google sex, or Google sexy lady, or Google boobs, and end up in Pornhub, than back when, before the internet, where you had to sneak into the 7-Eleven and steal the Hustler and put it in the back of your pants and then run out of the store. Pornography has been around forever. So one thing that you are teaching your kids about to be safe digital citizens is, if you have not spoken about pornography to your children in this age group, please do, and let them know that it exists, and let them know that it's, your values around it. Number two, if you haven't spoken to your children in this age group about going to these forums where they play and there are strangers there, and letting them know that, hey, it looks, they act and gave themselves a name like a kid, but they're probably an adult. So if they want information from you, or if you don't know them, don't talk to them. Please do. Everybody talks about child trafficking and all that kind of business. And, everybody is like, there's this like urban myth out there on social media that they're going to snatch your child at a mall. No. They're here. And again, child trafficking, it has gotten way too much in the news. It's gotten politicized. Child trafficking is an economic situation. So teach your children that nobody offers you work on a video game. Nobody makes $300 an hour if they don't have a master's degree. Nobody is going to offer you work at Sunset Place. And that the way to get, because a lot of the time they are offered money, work, and that's, or they're just like, hey, how are you? I love Harry Potter too, in the forums. So if you have not had a conversation with your child about digital safety and how to be a digital citizen, please do. And digital citizen curriculum, common sense media. Look it up. So I'm going to stop. I spoke about everything that was on my screen. Now I will make it so that if you want to raise your hand and you want to ask me a question live, you can. Now I'm going to give you time to put a question in the chat. If you want to send it to me privately, that because you don't want others to see your question, that's fine too. I get it. And I have one question. So let's see. The question is, you're talking about 13 Reasons Why show. Do you recommend to watch that with a 14-year-old? I had another psychologist that told me is almost a must to watch with them, that series, not alone, but with us. No, I was giving an example about, I was talking about using the television that they watch, the video games that they're attracted to, and the popular culture that they're attracted to learn about your child. Because although the media will have you believe that social media creates a depressed child, it's the other way around. A depressed child will find the things that cause more of the depression. So if we make the screen wrong, then we don't look at our child, right? We get rid of the screen rather than handling the child. And why was the child attracted to a TV show like 13 Reasons Why? That's why I brought it up. 13 Reasons Why is a really dangerous show. When it came out, I think it was 3.5 years ago. As a mental health professional, I was appalled. It would have been an amazing show if there would have been tiny little 3-minute segment after every episode talking about what was happening. So a suicidal child, or a child with suicidal ideation, get a fantasy about what would happen if they kill themselves, and that can be very dangerous. So no, I would not say that that's a must watch. It's a must watch for parents because it's real. It's, if you want to get slapped in the face about what 12 to 17-year-olds deal with, Atypical is a great show about autistic life. And 13 Reasons Why is a great show about those kids that are managing and handling depression and anxiety without letting anybody in, and dealing with sexuality and everything. It's very, very real. So it's more a show for adults than teens. And if your teen is interested in it, definitely do not let them watch it alone. Please watch with them and have conversations. But I as a mental health professional believe, and so did the American Psychological Association, as well as the American Psychiatric Association, we all were in agreement that it was a very dangerous show, because whenever there is a suicide in the school, there's always a I can't find the word. There's a copycat. It kind of opens the door. And that TV show was like fire to a flame. But again, watching 13 Reasons Why won't make you want to kill yourself. If you've been thinking about it, if you're depressed, watching 13 Reasons Why will tell you how. So no, I don't recommend it at all, actually, for teens. Okay. What was a website you recommended? Is it okay to keep? Okay. What was a website you recommended? Common Sense Media. It's a great place to find out all these things about screens. Common Sense Media. So I will type it for everyone. Common Sense Media. It's a great place. And then you could look for Digital Citizen Curriculum. It is made for teachers, but it's great for parents. And then the other thing that I talked about was the CDC has the school decision PDF. Okay. Okay. Is it okay to keep my child home doing virtual, even if he wants to go back to school? My younger child wants to remain virtual. Both of my kids are socializing with their friends at the soccer club during practice and games. Yes, of course it's okay. So again, your child is telling you, I want to go back to school, right? And so since you, and what I'm hearing is that you're making your life, you're making your life reasonable, right? So good for you for making your life reasonable, because the number one rule for all parents of children of all age groups, please make sure that you're okay, because the children in your home are only going to be as calm as you are. So it sounds like since your younger one is staying virtual, it makes sense for your family to not have to take one to school and leave another one home. So and it also feels like with the soccer club, you have already broken a bubble, right? So if we look at it in the way that the epidemiologists have been practicing saying that word, what they recommend, what those experts recommend, is that we think about as we progress, and as we continue to open and open and open and open and open and up, every time you break a bubble, you have to wait the 2 to 3 weeks, right? So it sounds like you broke the bubble with the soccer club. Now, make sure that you tell your child your reasons, right? Buddy, I know that this is really disappointing, right? And again, guys, do not expect that when you give the reason to the 12, 13, 14 and up year old, that they're not going to be disappointed, or they're not going to be frustrated, or they're not going to disagree with you. But most of them will be like, oh, I hate this. But they will hear your reasoning, and now they have a why, right? Because I said so is not kind to their brain. And then when you say, because I said so, and since they don't have your reason, now you've given them a to do. How do I figure out how to change their mind? So if you say, I am being practical, I am trying to stay as calm as possible, and you don't want a crazy mama in your house. So for now, because I'm keeping your sibling home, and because it will give us sanity, you're going to stay home. But I am going to be very conscious of the social aspects that you're asking me for, because and ask your child, hey, because I'm making. Oh, by the way, use this term. I didn't make this up. Brené Brown. I'll type that up too. If you don't know Brené Brown, go find her. Brené Brown. She has 2 TED Talks and a Netflix special. Watch the TED Talks first. She is a beautiful professor and social worker in Texas who has spent her life researching shame. And and I hadn't seen the Netflix special just because I've read all her books, and but I did. And she talked about, like, one way to get across to somebody else something that we've made up in our minds, something that we're like, when you're for sure thinking that your child is lying to you, a great way to kind of not make somebody else defensive is to look at them and say, I'm making up in my head that, right? So mom, you can say, hey, I'm making up in my head that you want to go to school because you want to be with your friends. Is that right? And if that's right, then maybe it's not school. Maybe you're going to go out of your way to find ways for your son, for your child. You didn't tell me it was a boy. For your child to be more social. So no, it's okay if you do it. And back to what I said in the beginning of the webinar, you're giving them the why, and then they feel more comfortable. Okay, another question. We recently took away our 13-year-old son's phone for a while because he was having a bad communication with a classmate about competition and who was better, and they wanted to fight. Now he is refusing to do any schoolwork or study because he says he needs his phone. The school provides a school iPad, so we know he does not necessarily need his phone, but we have sat with him many nights discussing this with him, and he is battling to study, do homework, or even go to soccer practice. Any suggestions? Okay, this is a 3-part question, so I'm going to handle each of them. The first part is consequences to actions. The second part is refusal of responsibility. And the third part is blackmail. So which one of these things is the easiest? Okay, the easiest is the blackmail. Let him not do his schoolwork. Let him not go to soccer, or take him to soccer and let him sit in your car and not get out of the car. And let him know, I know that you're really upset with me, but not doing your homework and not getting out of the car to go to soccer practice only hurts you. And then you tolerate it because he's blackmailing you with your value, right? Your value. And blackmail is a strong word, and I shouldn't use it because I love kids, and he's really upset about the phone. So I'll talk about, consequences. But once you set a consequence, you kind of have to follow through. And he's telling you, well, I'm not going to do what's important to you. What's important to you, Mom, is my grades and my sport. So I'm going to hurt you. And what that tells me is that he's not learning the lesson that you were trying to teach him by taking away his phone. See, so your consequence is off because it's not teaching the actual lesson. The actual lesson is you're hurting because you did something bad, rather than, you were, so if you keep this consequence, then let him fail. 1 day, 2 days of no homework, 1 day, 2 days of not turning in his work. When the teacher types you and says, hey, your son hasn't done his work, you could say, yeah, he's choosing not to do the work. Please also speak to him directly, because he's choosing to fail. Now, we wouldn't be over here if we go back to the original deal, right? So you took away the phone. And when we think about teaching and discipline, consequences are not about, the consequences need not be about things. It wasn't the phone that caused your son to compete with their friend. That was just the means that he was communicating, right? So you didn't have to take away the phone. You had to sit with the phone with your son, with whatever other adult that parents with you, and to have a conversation and to read the thread and to say, okay, buddy, so you're trying to be better than your friend. You're trying to tell your friend that you're better than them, and that's why you guys are in a fight. You are not handling your ego well. You are not handling losing and winning well. See, when you were just like, I'm taking away that phone because now you're in a big fight and you're acting like a fool, you didn't tell him how not to act like a fool, how not to compete. And now we made it about the phone. And it's, you know what, Georgina, it's such a common mistake that a lot of parents make. Back to this idea of, oh, they got on Instagram and now they want to wear sexy shorts. No, they want other people to love them and see them. So now they're wearing sexy shorts. They just happen to have seen it on Instagram. They found a solution to their problem. So your son's lesson is about communicating his pride and communicating about ego and communicating well without hurting somebody else's feelings to the point where the other person wants to fight them. It was not the phone. The phone didn't do anything. The phone was just a means of the bad communication. So when and if you take away a party, when and if you take away a phone, please don't make it indefinite. Please don't say, that's it, you got an F, so until the end of the 9 weeks, you're not gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because teenagers and early teens in particular, especially the ones that are give a little more pushback, got it. We'll handle that as well. So when, and again, it wasn't the phone. So again, when you take away something, right, make sure that it's 24 hours. Make sure that is one party, but not a long time, because when you do it for a long time, most teenagers will get a case of the F it. F it, I'm in trouble anyway. F it, I don't have my phone anyway. F it. And this thing of like not doing his work is that piece. So you added, the other boy was bullying him with racial stuff because we are Mexican and the other boy is not. Perfect. Again, you took away the wrong thing. This was an opportunity for you to ask your son for you, actually, in this case, it's like, wow, that was really hard, buddy. And you got very mad, rightly so. This person is using racial slurs to get under your skin. But what can you do instead? Maybe not talk to them, maybe block them, maybe think about who the messenger is. Does it really matter if this person who is racist, what they think about you? You missed in taking away the phone because you're a loving parent and you thought you were protecting your child from a bully, right? You didn't teach them how to stand up for themselves. So again, the phone is not the issue. The other person saying that he's a spick or a beaner, or that he should, that he crossed the border and he's illegal, your child is going to come up against people like that for the rest of his life. So in this age group, guys, they are starting to have issues from the real world. So we have to help them with real world issues. And the fact that your child wanted to beat that kid up, it's great. Actually, he was defending himself in an immature way. So it's okay. Come back with the phone and teach him about how to speak up for himself and or ignore and avoid ridiculous racist people. Rather than taking the phone away because you imagine that he doesn't know how to handle a bully. He handled it one way, with a fight. And that's the most immature way, but he was handling it. And everybody, please don't ever make your child, a victim or a perpetrator. Always think about, if you see them as a victim, think about, what are the choices that my child has to get out of this? If they are being mean to somebody else, don't think of your child as a bully or a perpetrator. Think about, what are the choices that my child has to fix this? We always have choice. If it were up to me, there would be 0 bully campaigns in the United States. There would be empathy campaigns, and there would be diversity campaigns. And then all of this victim, perpetrator, bullied, it wouldn't exist. So Georgina, go backwards, talk to your boy, let him know that you understand why he wanted to beat him up, but that's not the best way to handle a person that's disrespecting you. And go back to thinking about what the new rules can be about the phone. Okay, so next question. At what age group do kids get exposed to drugs, and how do you keep them from experimenting? Do you suggest being honest and telling them of your own drug use and how you regret it, or should you never mention it? Also, what do you do if you catch them using drugs? Okay, perfect. Okay, drugs. Drugs are available always. We live in Miami. Drugs are a part of most of our children's lives, and most of them are fully aware of it, and it's somewhere around them, about seventh grade, so 13. You you should be talking about drugs and alcohol yesterday. You should be talking about pornography and sex yesterday. So what are the conversations about drugs and alcohol? Stay away from fear mongering. No, like it's the end of the world, right? Again, in this age group, we say how, why, what do you think? So okay, so you're getting older, buddy, and you're going to hear a lot about pot, and you're going to hear a lot about alcohol, because alcohol is a drug, everybody. It's actually the number one drug of choice for our youth, and is the most addictive for our youth. And nobody thinks about alcohol, but alcohol is a drug, and alcoholism is a thing, and it still hurts and kills people. So so talk to them about your thoughts around it, right? So I think that the best way to talk about this is to talk about my own kids. I think it's a good example because I have a 12 and a 15-year-old. And I started talking to my kids about drugs and alcohol and sex from 11 on. And what I talked to them about, first I talked to them about what we know medically, right? So the brain, and again, I get away with it because I'm a brain lady, and I'm a therapist, and they know that about me. But you can approach it with I've been reading about this because it's something that I really wonder about and I really question. Right, so be vulnerable with your kid, and say to him and say to your children, and what I know is that when you drink, or when you use pot, or when you use hard drugs, you are changing the structure and the response of your brain. And from 12 to 24 years old, it's the fastest change that that the brain has in the human trajectory, right? So first talk about the medical, right? So the recommendation from neurologists, from the experts, is that we need to push, and right now what's social is pot and alcohol, right? This generation of kids equates marijuana with alcohol. They don't see it differently at all. Molly's, Adderall, cocaine, crack, that's still kind of like illicit and a drug. And, most kids of this generation see it like, yeah, that's, that's dumb. I was going to say whack, but that makes me so old. I'm 48, people. So, and it's, and it is, so first talk about the medical, share with them that most neurologists, most doctors want people to push any type of mind altering drugs that are not to medicate the brain, for 24 and older, right? Second, talk to them about the reasons why that people use drugs and alcohol, right? Because they want to, for liquid courage, because they feel embarrassed, so then they get drunk, and then now they feel brave to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So then you can have a conversation about, well, how can you feel comfortable in a social situation? How can you be brave in a social situation? What can you do instead of using mind altering drugs? And then talk to them about what to do if somebody offers them drugs. Please don't tell your child, if somebody offers you pot or alcohol, they're not your friend. That's not true, right? Please put your mindset around this idea that I want your child to go to the party where there's Molly, cocaine, and alcohol, and your child can be there dancing, having a good time, saying to his friends that's on a Molly, nah, I'm good. I want that to be your goal, right? And so yes, talk to them about drugs and alcohol. Yes, talk to them about the different reasons why you think people use drugs and alcohol. Ask them what they think, and less is more with your conversations around drugs and alcohol. And about your past, because teens are really good at using your information for reasons for why they should use it. So I would keep that in the low and not necessarily discuss it. Okay, last question. I'm gonna stay on a little bit longer because this is a great question. My son is one of the only ones in his class without a phone. He is 12, but he does not need that because I am always around him. I am taking him everywhere and told him he needs to wait until 13, but he still insists. He does have an iPad that communicates with his friends. He is a very responsible kid, but I want to make sure I am doing the right thing. Okay. There is no magic age for the cell phone. No. Let me take that back. I'm gonna reverse. Most children under 10 cannot take care of a cell phone. Most children under 10 will lose a cell phone. Most children under 10 will talk to a stranger in a cell phone. Most children under 10 will get themselves into a lot of trouble with a cell phone. So when you think about your child and a cell phone, would you leave them alone at Dolphin Mall with $100 without any instructions? Can your child, however old they are, survive the Dolphin Mall with $100 for a day, buy themselves lunch, ask questions, and not spend all the $100 in one place? Because that's what a cell phone is, right? You have to know who to get help from. You have to know what to buy and what to not buy. You have to know when to stop, right? You have to know how to stop pleasure. You have to know how to not be impulsive. So developmentally, very few kids under the age of 12 can do that, right? So 12, sixth grade, there is the social pariah part, but I like your wraparound with the iPad. But we allow our children to have a phone when they show us responsibility, right? So when a child wants something, we can say to them, I need to see you do these 5 things, and not 5 random things, like 5 real things, like you will show me responsibility when I see you pack your book bag and make your bed every night and help me, and like think about the things that you will know that your child is responsible. You will show me that you can control your impulses when you don't scream at me when I tell you to stop playing your video game, when you don't lose your mind when I tell you to turn off the TV. So I need you to have responsibility, and I need you to have impulse control to have this phone. And you will show me that you are ready for a phone when you know how to be safe around the adult world and making decisions. So it's less about age and more about how much impulse control does your child have, how responsible are they, and how much do they understand about the difference between safety and danger, and give them the guidelines so they can work for them. All right, guys, I went 4 minutes over because your questions were awesome. This is a really difficult age group, but remember that they are little tiny seedlings popping from the ground, becoming adults. Enjoy the metamorphosis. See them changing from child to adult right before your eyes. I will be doing this free webinar again a month from now, because every week I do a different age group. Always go to the events page thank you guys for telling me I'm awesome. I love you guys too. Always go to the events page to see when the free webinar is. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, where I only talk about you and your family and your child for an hour and a half, please go to the website, please go to contact and schedule a parenting consultation with me. I do this with you live. I listen to you. I give you individualized feedback. After that hour and a half, you're going to get the why of the behavior of your child, the solution to the behavior of your child, and the plan for all of you, because it's usually you. That's why my place is called Stop Parenting Alone rather than I Fix Your Child. And thank you to those that I know and love. Thank you for being here. It feels great when I see you guys come back and come visit me. And I'll see you next time. And this will be up in the website under blogs in a couple of days. All of the recorded talks about this age group are also there under blogs, recorded page. And